and welcome to the 22nd session of Tahrir Dialogue. My name is Emad Shahin. I'm a professor of public policy at the School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the American University in Cairo. I'm very happy to welcome all of you and also to thank you for taking the time to attend this important discussion or session. I think on a very important issue that attempts to tackle Arab Spring from a different dimension, from a different perspective, and to try to explore the links between democracy and the struggle to build a democratic society and the dynamics of mass violence. Of course, we cannot have a better scholar to help us discuss and explain and understand this interconnectedness between democracy and the possibility of the emergence of mass violence more than Dr. Abdel Affendi. Dr. Abdel Affendi, let me just ask a question. Right, I was asked to raise this question. How many of you would prefer us to conduct the conversation and the discussion in Arabic, and how many in Arabic would like us to talk in Arabic? All right, English? So, all right. This is really counter exactly to what our expectation. We thought that everyone would like it to be conducted in Arabic, so we'll do it in English then. What I was saying is we're really privileged to have with us Dr. Abdel Affendi to discuss this issue from different perspectives. As you know, most of the attention has been focusing on transition and actually the countries that made it: Tunisia, Egypt, the Arab Spring, from the different dimensions of the hope for dignity and for improvement of economic life and standard of living. Here we have a situation actually where the Arab Spring has taken a violent turn in Syria in particular, and of course in Darfur before. We're not talking in this case, of course, of similar drive or a similar consequence of the Arab Spring, because of course the problem of Darfur goes back decades before the struggle in Syria. But we're talking, of course, about two main issues. One issue, of course, is the struggle for democracy and the struggle for integration, equality, and dignity. And that's where I think the similarities are. Dr. Abdel Affendi, he actually has a very busy schedule, but I would like really personally to thank him for taking the time to be with us today. As a background, I'll just go over his many contributions, and I will try to be very brief because I have a long list, of course, of contributions here. Dr. Affendi is a reader in politics at the Center of the Study of Democracy, University of Westminster, and coordinator of the Center's Democracy and Islam program. He is also currently a fellow in the RCUK Global Uncertainties program and visiting fellow at the Center for Islamic Studies, University of Cambridge. He has been a member of many prestigious entities and academies and councils. I will just mention a few. He was among the core team of authors of the Arab Human Development Report of 2004. He was also a member of the steering committee of the Contextualizing Islam in Britain project, and co-author of the report Contextualizing Islam in Britain 2009-2011. He's also a member of, I would like to look at because this sounds similar to us, is a member of the advisory board of Prince Al-Walid ibn Talal Center for the Study of Islam in the Contemporary World. He has also written prolifically. His most recent publication is About Muhammad. The title of his most recent book is About Muhammad, the Other Western Perspective on the Prophet of Islam. That was published 2011. His other books include Who Needs an Islamic State? This is a book that came in several editions, and I have assigned this book several times. Who Needs an Islamic State? He also produced Turabi's Revolution, Islam and Power in Sudan, Rethinking Islam and Modernity, For a State of Peace, Conflict and the Future of Democracy on Sudan, and The Conquest of Muslim Hearts and Minds, Perspectives on U.S. Reform and Public Diplomacy Strategies. There are so many other, reports and articles and publications, but I think, for the sake of time, I would just, would ask you to join me in welcoming Dr. Abdel Wahab Affendi.
Thank you very much, Emad, and thanks for the American University in Cairo for kindly hosting me, inviting me today to give this talk. It is indeed a privilege and a great pleasure for me. Now, all of you have been following the tragic events in Syria in recent years, in recent months, but I think one of the things which stopped me or attracts my attention is the way the Syrian regime tries to present its version of the story. And it reminds me of, that's where one of the links between the two issues started, of a conversation I had with a Sudanese official at the beginning of the crisis in Darfur. At that time, I genuinely wanted to know what were the causes, what were the dynamics. And so when I encountered him, I said, can you please give me some explanations, your side of the story, of explanation of what the crisis in Darfur. And he said, what crisis? There is no crisis in Darfur. All this is from what you hear from the Western media. It's manufactured by Western media. And after I recovered from the shock for a while, I said, do you mean to tell me that all these hundreds of thousands of people who left their homes or in the camps switched on CNN and then started running after reading the news on CNN? Or, I mean, so the same sense I get from listening also to the Syrian pro-regime spin doctors trying to explain that either there is no crisis or there is this is just a few people or just bandits or just criminals or Al-Qaeda, and also American-supported, which is Al-Qaeda supported, American-supported Al-Qaeda at the same time. So there is, but this is, by the way, this is not incidental. I think the narratives which explain or try to justify mass violence, there is I have been doing research over the last 3 years on precisely this topic of how narratives, and particular narratives, and in this situations what I call narratives of insecurity, seems to be a feature in both mass violence and justifying dictatorship or lack of democracy. Now, I'll tell you how in a minute. But before this, I think there was always two mysteries about Syria and Darfur, which has been exercising people. The first is that when Hafiz al-Assad troops did their mass killings in Hama in 1982, there didn't appear to be any international condemnation of what happened. In fact, anybody who goes back to the media, especially the Western media at that time, will find a lot of understanding and sometimes praise of al-Assad for doing what he did in Hama. And I remember one of the indirect quotation by Thomas Friedman in his book on that episode was to say that many people, that's what he quoted, he said many people in Syria said it's better 18 days of mass killing in Hama rather than 13 years of civil war as in Lebanon. So there was this kind of almost praise of mass killings in Hama at that time. At the same time, a lot of people asked the different question: how did the Darfur crisis acquire this mass media attention, and while most comparable African crises, including the war in South Sudan itself, which lasted 20 years and caused many more deaths, why was this given all this international prominence and that one not? And I think one of the, of course, there was the here again there was the usual conspiracy theory explanation that, of course, it must be that the West have found oil in Darfur, there must be Israel is behind it, or there must be this or that. But I would like to stop at one particular explanation, which is a bit more sophisticated type of conspiracy theory, which is some of you must be familiar with, and it's Mahmoud Mabdani's explanation in his book of 2009, in which he linked, he said, Darfur is the other side that he said of the war on terror. And his argument was that, in a nutshell, I'm not going to go into it in details, that the way Darfur crisis was given prominence in the Western media explains more the pathology of American and Western politics than the crisis of a failing state in Africa. And in his argument was that American activists who at the same time of the Darfur crisis were confronted with the war in Iraq, where according to him there were many more civilian casualties, and where America was directly responsible, chose, instead of being citizens, American citizens, taking responsibility for their own countries doing harm abroad and agitating against the war in Iraq, decided to be philanthropists trying to take care of helpless victims in Africa. And for him, this is a kind of American problem rather than African problem. Now, I don't want to go into much details about this, but I must say I disagree with this analysis because I think that denouncing atrocities selectively, when denouncing atrocities selectively, the question should be asked not about the atrocities you denounce, but about the ones you do not denounce. And in this regard, it doesn't matter who denounced the atrocity when they denounce it. But this leaves us with the other question about why what the Syrian atrocities of 1982 actually not denounced and even almost praised. And this leads to the crux, I think, of the point, because there is an insight into which Mamdani gets in this, in that there is a link between terror and mass killings and the reactions they evoke. In both cases, the people who commit mass terrorism or commit mass killings, including genocide, are seen to step a boundary, to step a line which is just beyond the pale. We do not see that there is anything which justifies such actions. At the same time, when we look at it from the side of the victims, the victims also say that because a line has been crossed, then also anything goes, that we are justified in our retribution in the way we decide to go on about correcting this incorrectible kind of victimization. In this regard, the way this works, we have seen it in not only in the response, for example, to 9/11, when in the name of trying to respond to the 9/11 atrocities, a lot of other atrocities were committed, including torture. Some are still being conducted, including extrajudicial killings of suspects. And of course, when you have the situation of a state like Israel, where both genocide and terrorism are seen as either past or future threats or current threats, then you are permitted a lot of leeway when you react. And many people don't seem to understand this. I think that the Israelis are given let off lightly because they control the Western media, or because the West is too sympathetic to them, although there are elements in media bias and Western bias. But I think the more fundamental issue is that when it comes to terror and when it comes to genocide, they are trump cards. And there's another link, I think, between Darfur and the war on terror, which is also significant, and this is the use of not only atrocities but proxy militias. In both the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, there was plenty of use of proxy militias, and the use of militias is both, as Alex Duval said about Darfur, low-cost or low-cost counterinsurgency or cut-price counterinsurgency, and at the same time, it's also a source of deniability for the regimes or for the governments concerned. That you say that we didn't do that, we didn't do the murder in Baghdad, or it was done by the others. We didn't do it in Darfur, it was done by other people. Similarly, the use of course, the private companies. And we have seen this in Syria in abundance, the use of militias who are also the so-called Shibiha. But again, if we go back to the Syrian case, we find that one of the reasons why Hama was given such a light treatment was precisely the fact that terror and genocide together figured in the conflict at that time. The Islamist insurgents who started or who were involved in the conflict in the 1980s did engage in acts of terror, and in one incident at least they were involved in what